Hi, so have you wanted to judge wine? Do you have what it takes? Wine judging. Let's figure it out.
Coming up. All right, so whenever I go into a winery or a wine shop, or even go on to a
Which we do often.
which we do often,
Okay.
which we did today, as it turns out.
We're very familiar, so what do you see when it
Or
happens?
even when you go onto a website for
It's
a
true.
winemaker, you're going to see all of the bottles with ribbons and medals and awards and all of that. And you and I both know a lot of that is marketing. A lot
of
it
that is marketing.
And so there's lots of different organizations that will judge wines and hand out awards and hardware.
Sure, and we're talking about this in a different context than we talked about ratings. This is different.
Yeah, it's not ratings. And many times the judging and the awards are to help not just that particular winemaker, but also the region, to promote the wine region and to say,
Sure.
we've got lots of award-winning wines here in the Northern Virginia wine region, the Missouri wine region, the
Sure.
Texas up-and-coming wine region.
Yeah.
And so they use awards and judging to promote them. But are they just bogus?
Well, I want to know how long they've been doing this too, because every time I tried to look about it, it just kept coming up with the Judgment of Paris, and I know you know all the history of these
Right.
things.
So the Judgment of Paris, for those of you who don't know, and if you're not really into wine, you don't care, but there was this, we do, there was this event in the 70s where a California winemaker, as kind of a publicity stunt, they challenged some French winemakers to a blind judging, and they brought their Chardonnay and a couple of other wines.
It was a big debate. The French didn't think the Californian wine was up to their standards, and so it was a real controversial.
And they played it up certainly for it, and there's
they did.
movies about it. But the
Movie was great.
the California winemakers were these American redneck hillbillies. They weren't really. They're very sophisticated
They were
winemakers.
actually really great farmers and winemakers. But anyway,
They were. But there's this judgment, and as a result of this blind taste test, the judges, who were European judges, picked the California wines over the French wines.
it was a big coup.
It was a big coup, and
Yes.
of course it was played up still being played up as proof that America and New World wines were every bit as good or better than a lot of Old World wines.
That is what I was finding though when I'm, kind of looking into judging. That was the main thing that was popping up for me.
Sure, but it turns out
Yes.
as long as people have been making wine, which I think I think historians can go back 10,000 years or something now.
You usually say biblical times.
Biblical time, before biblical times.
Before
Biblical times,
really?
yeah. There are ancient Sumerian clay tablets that describe wine and wine qualities and debates
Were they
about wine.
snooty about it?
They were. Ancient Greeks, Aristotle and Plato both came independently.
They were snooty in that old time language too.
Yes.
That would be, that would be fun.
And both, well, as I was saying, both Plato and Aristotle came up with their own systems for judging wines and wine
Oh
qualities.
wow.
Yes.
That should sound very wise because they always said everything in a very wise
That's
manner.
right. That's right. And then you get, as I talk biblical times, in the Bible. I always find it amusing if you read a passage that has anything to do with wine, they sort of stop telling you about religion and talk about the wine very briefly. Sometimes it's just a snide comment, it's new wine, or this is the best wine. And
I don't know. They're so wise back in that day. I think I might have to just go straight forward. So good to know that you found out something a little bit beyond.
yeah,
the judgment of
absolutely.
Paris.
And when we talk about modern wine classifications and judgment, modern goes back to the 1500s.
Wow.
So it's been going on for a long time. But I do believe, and I do think that the Paris judgment made wine judging a mainstream pop culture thing, and not just for snooty, really wealthy people who had wine collections. It brought it to the forefront of ordinary people, to where we have now every vineyard has a display case, a trophy case with all of their ribbons and medals and things. So,
Well, some of the things at the modern day judging, it still plays in, like we said, there is a lot of marketing involved. Just like when you submit something to be rated in a magazine, you pay for that. So the competitions that they have everywhere, and they can be international competitions. It could be across one particular nation. It could be individual states might have their own competitions. You do have entry fees that they pay for that. So some wineries and winemakers will actually budget for that. And again, like the Academy Awards, you have to submit yourself, you have to nominate yourself in order to be awarded or in the mix for it. So if you don't have that in your budget, and some winemakers choose not to, then you're not going to have those medals.
And it's certainly true if you talk to people within a wine region. There's a certain amount of popular kids versus unpopular kids, and certain people are known as, wine, the leaders in whatever wine region industry, and they get lots of awards. And is there pettiness? Is there, all of those kinds of things that, whether it's dog judging or cat judging or wine judging, that go into it. The personalities play. Well, that's part of the fun of it. Frankly,
yes,
that's part of the.
They have very strict rules when they're doing it nowadays, for sure. So they have it as a blind tasting, and they're very serious about how they do that. It's a big operation to have people in the back making sure there's nothing on that bottle that can be seen to identify what the maker is. So you could have something that sells on the shelf for $325 competing against something that sells for $38.
Right, and but do these awards, if I go into the shop or the winery and I see the bottle with all of the gold ribbons and hardware,
right?
Am I guaranteed to get really top and high end wine, or is it just a gimmick?
It is not just a gimmick. You do have qualified people. So in today's times, the people that are judging this, you could do it yourself, but at these competitions, they have wine educators, wine critics, wine restaurateurs. They might have sommeliers, masters of sommelier, masters of wine. It does depend on that particular competition. But they have experienced people who have daily contact and knowledge with wine. They're tasting wine on a regular basis. So, I taste wine on a regular basis, but I'm not. Maybe I should try them. But at the end of the day, too, it's an opinion, because it is these people's opinion. It might vary from my opinion. So is it going to sway me? I might be interested, I might be curious, but it is still someone's opinion. What they did find, though, interestingly enough, is that in some of these competitions, they do talk with each other, but they will actually have ratings that are pretty close together when they are tasting the same wines. So I thought that really does say they're pretty accurate.
Well, and I know from the winemakers that we know and that we've talked to and worked with, they will put forward their best wines. And so
absolutely,
if there's a judging this year and their Cab Franc wasn't really their best Cab Franc, they're not going to put that up for judging. So they are putting forward what they think are really their best wines.
And there's something really important to know, that in most of these competitions, and again, each one might have its individual rules that vary slightly, but generally speaking, they're giving away gold and silver and bronze medals according to how that wine tastes. It is not a first, second, third ranking. So if you have Cabernets, because
bronze still sure sounds like a third ranking.
Hey now, well, some of them aren't going to actually rank. Some of them are not going to get a medal.
That's true.
Not all of them do. So you do have to meet a certain standard for the judges to award you with that medal. And go to dog competitions, because I know we watch those and we know you're competing against that varietal or type. So a Meritage is like a Bordeaux. So you'd be competing against other similar blends of that type. Cabernets are going to compete against Cabernets, that sort of thing. They will have a competition in most of these where they take the top of these different varietals and put them up together to get like a governor's award,
Right, the top award.
That's going to be the top award.
And I think it's also, it's true that because wines do vary year by year, no matter whether it's France or whether it's California or whether it's Argentina, the wine is going to vary. So if something got the governor's award or the special award for their 2019, their 2020 is probably going to be a good wine too, because they're excellent winemakers. They've proven that, but it may not be the same as the award-winning one.
Sure. So what they are doing when they're actually doing this judging, they are doing some standards of trying to look at the clarity and the color, They're going to look at the aromas, and I say, look, they're going to smell for aroma, bouquet, the flavors themselves, and then the finish. So they're going to talk about all of those components, and they're going to have notes written down about that. And then they'll again make those decisions on.
So one of the things that I always find is that if I have, and I know they're spitting the wine out, which I find to be a crime. But if you imagine if you've got 30 Cabernets you've got to try by the time you get to 15 or 16.
So yes, but I have to tell you, seriously, they said 120. You could sit there and taste 120 rosés in 3 hours.
In 3 hours.
In 3 hours.
So when you get to number 87.
Yes.
Your taste buds. How can your taste buds be?
If you were drinking, you would
This is fantastic.
Okay, go ahead.
But if when that judge gets to number 87, 88, 89, how is he or she even being objective anymore? Because you've had so many very, very similar things. I mean, it's got to all.
I think it is very wearing on a person. They are doing all the cleansing palette techniques and things in between. There is a lot that goes into this planning to do this, but I would find it very exhausting myself. Yeah. I'm not a professional taster to do that kind of a competition.
I wouldn't do it if I had to spit it all out. If I could just drink the wine, then yeah. Well, so yes. This brings up. Mm-hmm. There's another kind of wine judging, the amateur wine judging, and that's the guy at the wine shop or the winery who's doing this and sniffing the cork and pontificating about the earthiness and the sense of this, that, and the other thing.